So welcome back to the U.S. Navy History Podcast. I am the Captain, Dale, and I am joined by the XO, the Christoph. Hey, dude.
Hey, the Dale. It's very good to see you, Captain. I'm glad we'll be diving into some more history.
Yes. So how does WW1 sound?
It sounds tragic and utter. I don't know. I have a lot of opinions about it. Those will probably be explored if we're going to dive in. Are we diving in?
Oh, we are diving
Yes.
in. And tragic is a very, very good word for this war.
Yes.
All right. So as with any conflict, we're going to start with just the breakdown of everything, and then we're going to jump into the different theaters and then any naval battles that involve the United States of America.
Excellent.
Sound
There
good?
will be many.
Yes. So you ready to get underway?
Yes, I am.
All right. So for much of the 19th century, the major European powers maintained a thin balance of power among themselves, known as the Concert of Europe. After 1840, this was challenged by a number of things, which included Britain's withdrawal into a so-called splendid isolation. This is when Britain was like, you know what? We're just going to go and think about ourselves and what we've done up until this point and, try to be better people.
That's always a good goal, I think, to become a better person.
Yeah.
I don't know if isolating yourself, I can speak from personal experience. Isolating yourself doesn't necessarily do that, but I can see if you have a tendency to colonize, maybe make yourself impress yourself upon other people. Maybe holding back is the right solution for you.
Another factor is the decline of the Ottoman Empire and the rise of the Prussia Empire under Otto von Bismarck. The 1866 Austro-Prussian War established the Prussian hegemony in Germany, while the victory of the Franco-Prussian War allowed Bismarck to consolidate the German states into a German empire under Prussian leadership. With the French avenging the defeat of the 1871, it became important to them to recover the provinces of Alsace-Lorraine, and this pretty much became their policy for the next 40 years. So, in order to isolate France and avoid a two-front war, Bismarck negotiated the League of the Three Empires between Austria-Hungary, Russia, and Germany. That lasted until Russia defeated the Turkish Empire in the Russo-Turkish War in 1878.
Oh, okay.
The league was then dissolved due to Austrian concerns over Russian influence in the Balkans. This was an area the Austrians considered very vital. So Germany and Austria-Hungary then formed the Dual Alliance in 1879. And this became the Triple Alliance when Italy joined in 1882.
It's all lining up.
Yeah. So for Bismarck, the purpose of these agreements was to isolate France by ensuring the three empires resolved any disputes between themselves. And this was threatened in 1881 by British and French attempts to negotiate directly with Russia. At this time, the League it was formed in 1881. And, it was renewed in 83, then 85. And then in 87, the League was replaced by the Reinsurgence Treaty. Have you heard of the Reinsurgence Treaty?
Reinsurgence Treaty? No, I don't think so.
It was a secret agreement between Germany and Russia to remain neutral if either were attacked by France or Austria-Hungary.
Oh, that's vital.
It is. So Bismarck viewed peace with Russia as the foundation of German foreign policy. But when Wilhelm II became Kaiser in 1890, this forced him to retire and was persuaded not to renew the Reinsurgence Treaty by Leo von Caprivi, who was his new chancellor. So this allowed France an opportunity to counteract this alliance by signing the Franco-Russian alliance in 1894. And then the Entente with Britain in 1904. Now we have another triple alliance.
Yeah, this is already complicated, like unnecessarily so, and I can see why it snowballs. I mean, spoiler alert, it snowballs.
Oh, yes. So they're not really formal alliances, but by settling long-standing colonial disputes in Africa and Asia, British entry into any foreign conflict involving France or Russia now was a possibility. The British and Russian support for France against Germany during the Gdr crisis in 1911 reinforced their relationship and increased Anglo-German estrangement, which deepened the divisions that are going to erupt in what year?
I know this.
Yeah, you do. You should.
1913?
You're so close. 1914.
14, that's what I said. 1914.
We'll go back and check the recording.
Yeah, okay.
Nope, you said 1913.
What?
Sorry.
No, your recording software's all messed up.
So that brings us to an arms race. So the creation of a unified Reich, along with payments imposed on France because of the whole crisis, and the acquisition of coal and iron deposits in the annexed provinces of Alsace-Lorraine. This fueled an economic boom and huge increase in German industrial strength. So with the backing of Wilhelm II, Admiral Alfred von Trippitz sought to exploit this growth and create a Kaiserliche Marine, or the Imperial German Navy.
Okay. Thanks for translating.
You're welcome. I don't even know if I pronounced it correctly, but
that's the beauty of the show. We press forward. Mistakes will be made, but that's the price of delivering the unvarnished truth.
Yes. Now, the creation of this Navy put them in a position to be able to compete with the British Royal Navy for naval supremacy across the entire world. The admiral was greatly influenced by U.S. naval strategist Alfred Thayer Mahan.
Really?
Who argued possession of a blue water navy was vital for global power projection.
Oh.
The admiral had his books translated into German, while Wilhelm made them required reading for his advisors and senior military personnel.
Go America.
Right. Well, no, this is Germany doing something.
No, I know,
correct.
But they got the American book translated because we convinced them, we as Americans, convinced them that they needed a blue water navy.
Another reason for the decision by Wilhelm was emotion, because of his admiration for the Royal Navy and his desire to outdo it.
Oh.
Bismarck, to his credit, did stress the need to avoid antagonizing the British people, and this was made easier by his opposition to acquiring colonies. This is the time when, colonialism was on a downturn.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's good too, that Bismarck was like, no, we can't just start taking native people's land from them.
Well, the motivation is because he doesn't want to upset his European neighbors. I think they would, regardless of what the natives think, but it's now gauche in high society.
Right. I mean, spoiler alert, they try to go for industrial, or they try to take the major powers'
Oh, yeah.
land instead.
Why play checkers when you can play chess?
So the launch of the HMS Dreadnought in 1906 gave the British a technological advantage over the German Navy, which, they never lost the technological advantage.
No. Well,
ultimately, the race diverted high resources to creating a German Navy large enough to antagonize the British, but not defeat it. In 1911, Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann Hollweg acknowledged defeat, leading to the Rüstungswagen, or armaments turning point, where he switched expenditure from the Navy to the Army. And, during World War II, this was a big deal.
Oh, yeah. It's just interesting to hear it unfold. You know what I mean? Like all the different alliances, all the different decisions that are made at these inflection points and how they contributed to what ultimately happened.
So there was concern over Russia's recovery from defeat in 1905 during the Russo-Japanese War and the subsequent revolution that happened because of that. Also, economic reforms backed by French funding led to a significant post-1908 expansion of railways and infrastructure, particularly in its western border regions. Germany and Austria-Hungary relied on faster mobilization to compensate for a lot less numbers. And it was the potential threat posed by the closing of this gap that led to the end of the naval race, rather than a reduction in tensions. When Germany expanded its standing army by 170,000 men in 1913, France extended their compulsory military service from 2 to 3 years.
Oh.
Which the Balkans power and Italy also did. Then this led to increased expenditure by the Ottomans and Austria-Hungary.
It's just a keeping up with the Joneses situation.
Let's talk about the Balkans for a little bit. The years before 1914 were marked by a series of crises in the Balkans, as other powers sought to benefit from the Ottoman decline.
Yeah.
So Russia considered itself the protector of Serbia and other Slav states, and the strategic importance of the Bosporus Straits meant that they preferred these to be controlled by weak Ottoman governments rather than a ambitious power like Bulgaria. And balancing these competing objectives required simultaneously backing their clients while limiting their territorial gains.
That makes sense. That is tricky, but at the same time, very manipulative.
So this policy divided Russian policymakers and added to the instability of the region.
Yeah.
So while this is happening, a lot of Austrian statesmen consider the Balkans essential for the continued existence of their empire, and Serbian expansion as a direct threat to the 1908-1909 Bosnian crisis began when Austria annexed the former Ottoman territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which it had actually occupied since 1878.
Hmm.
This was time to coincide with the Bulgarian Declaration of Independence from the Ottoman Empire. And this action was announced by all of the great powers. Now, nobody was able to reverse it, so it was amended. So they amended the 1878 Treaty of Berlin and accepted Austrian annexation. Tensions are further heightened by the 1911 to 1912 Italo-Turkish War, which demonstrated the apparent inability of the Ottomans to retain their empire and led to the formation of the Balkan League, an alliance of Serbia, Bulgaria, Montenegro, and Greece. This league overran most of the European Turkey in 1912 and 1913, which was the First Balkan War. Even though the Ottomans were on their way out, the great powers had assumed the Ottoman army was powerful enough to defeat the League, and when they collapsed, everybody was very surprised.
A foreshadowing of events to come.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
The Serbian capture of the ports on the Adriatic resulted in partial Austrian mobilization on November 21st of 1912, which included units along the Russian border in Galicia. When the Russian Council of Ministers met to consider their response the day after, they were like, you know what, let's just not mobilize. Because if we mobilize, then Germany's going to mobilize. Yeah. And that's a war we're not prepared for yet. So the great powers did try once more to reassert control through the 1913 Treaty of London. This created an independent Albania and enlarged the territories of Bulgaria and Serbia, Montenegro, and Greece. But disputes between the victors sparked a 33-day Second Balkan War, when Bulgaria attacked Serbia and Greece on June 16, 1913. After which it was defeated, losing most of Macedonia to Serbia and Greece, and southern Dubroju to Romania. No, Dubroja to Romania. The result was that even countries which benefited from the Balkan Wars, like Serbia and Greece, felt cheated of their rightful gains, while Austria demonstrated the apparent indifference which other powers viewed concerns over, which included Germany. This complex mix of resentment, nationalism, and insecurity help explain why the pre-1914 Balkans became known as the powder keg of Europe.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Is everybody still following me so far?
Well, the beauty of podcast is they can go back and review the steps that were taken to get here.
It may take a few rewinds.
It's a super, very, very, very entwined situation between a lot of people who don't trust each other.
So that's going to bring us to the famous assassination. On June 28th of 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, who was heir to Emperor Franz Joseph, visited Sarajevo, capital of the annexed provinces of Bosnia and Herzegovina. 6 assassins from the young Bosnia took up positions along the route taken by the Archduke's motorcade, with the intention of murdering. They were supplied by extremists within the Serbian Black Hand intelligence organization. They hoped that his death would freeze Bosnia from Austrian rule, even though they did not know what was going to replace it. They miscalculated, of course, but yeah,
oh, yeah.
We'll be getting into that.
Well, I think it's important to note that Franz Ferdinand was very friendly to Bosnia. Like he wanted to encourage and not necessarily control them and dominate them like his predecessors had. And so it's almost like you're assassinating the one person that could help you the most. But I think they were just so wrapped up in um, what they felt was a long time oppression, and they just couldn't take it anymore. Even though just around the
Yeah.
corner was hope.
Well, no, not hope. That's not around the corner.
It could have been, but it's stifled. Like
It
it's
could
it's
have
kind of
been.
like you're driving a car, and it's like, hey, 53 exits down, there's going to be this awesome gas station, super clean bathrooms, all the food you want, but you're hungry now, you see, and I'm going to exit early, get lost, get carjacked, and then so on and so forth. When, if
Mm,
you just would have kept driving and dealt with the hunger for a little bit longer, you'd have a beautiful day. That's
yeah.
the end of my not so great analogy.
Noted. So, a guy who I'm going to mispronounce his name, Nediliko Kabrinovic, he threw a grenade at the Archduke's car and injured two of his aides, who were taken to a hospital, and the convoy carried on. You would think after a grenade is lobbed into your convoy, you'd just get the heck out of there.
You would think. I can see the
You'd be
rationale of,
like,
well, the worst is over now. At least everyone's okay. Let's continue. But yeah, should have gotten out of there.
now, the other assassins were also unsuccessful, but an hour later, as Ferdinand was returning from visiting the injured officers, his car took a wrong turn into a street where a guy named Gavrilo Princip
Mm.
was standing. He stepped forward and fired two pistol shots, fatally wounding Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, who died shortly after that. Now, his dad, Emperor Franz Joseph, was obviously shocked by this, but political and personal differences meant that the two men were not close. Allegedly, his first reported comment was, quote, "A higher power has reestablished the order which I, alas, could not preserve."
Whoa, that's pretty yeah. I hope my dad doesn't say that about me.
Yeah, that was mean.
It's just like, hey, what are you going to do? It's in God's hands, which, maybe, but show some compassion like you cared about him.
Yeah. Now, according to a historian, Mr. Zeman, he said that his reaction was reflected more broadly in Vienna, where, quote, "The event almost failed to make any impression whatsoever. On Sunday, June 28th, and Monday, the 29th, the crowds listened to music and drank wine as if nothing had happened."
Wow. Imagine if you were one of those crowd members and you would look back on that day thinking, had we only known how hungry we would be or how miserable this conflict would become.
How many of my family members would die?
Yeah. That's I hate to keep jumping ahead, but this is so stark. Like, hey, non-event, somebody died, but I mean the gears are turning.
Yeah. But the impact of the murder of the heir to the throne was, as we know, significant, and was described by historian Christopher Clark as a 9/11 effect, a terrorist event charged with historic meaning, transforming the political chemistry in Vienna. So the Austro-Hungarian authorities encouraged the anti-Serb riots in
Oh, Sarajevo.
where the Boston Croats and Bosniaks killed two Bosnian Serbs and damaged numerous Serb-owned buildings. The violent actions against the ethnic Serbs were also organized outside Sarajevo. In other cities in the Austro-Hungarian controlled Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Slovenia. The Austro-Hungarian authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina imprisoned and extradited approximately 5,500 prominent Serbs. And between 700 and 2,200 died in prison.
Wow.
A further 460 Serbs were sentenced to death. So a prominently Bosniak special militia known as the Skupskorps was established and carried out the persecution of Serbs. So that's going to take us to July, the July crisis.
All right.
This was a month of diplomatic maneuvering between Austria-Hungary, Germany, Russia, France, and Britain. These countries believed intelligence officials, correctly, from the Black Hand, were involved in the plot to murder the Archduke. And Austria wanted to end Serbian interference in Bosnia and believed war was the best way to achieve this. However, the Austrian-Hungarian Foreign Ministry had no proof of Serbian involvement. And a dossier belatedly compiled to make its case was riddled with errors. Here's your proof. Don't mind all the errors.
Yeah. I mean, this is discouraging. I see echoes of this in our modern day of, hey, we want to do this thing. Well, why do you want to do this thing? It's like, we've got all this proof. It's like, that's not really solid. It's like, just don't worry about it. Let us do the thing. Nah, yeah. I don't know. And won't there be consequences if you do this thing? No. This is the right solution.
Oh, there's definitely consequences.
But there, yeah, definitely there will be consequences. But I imagine if you are the leadership of the Austria-Hungarian Empire and your foreign minister says, hey, here's the proof you need. I'm like, great, I want to do this thing. Nobody is saying, hey, just so you know, if we do this, Russia's getting involved. And then, oh, by the way, they're allied with this. Because these alliances were publicly declared many times. So it's not a mystery what will happen.
So on July 23rd, Austria delivered an ultimatum to Serbia, listing 10 demands made intentionally unacceptable to provide an excuse for starting hostilities. Serbia ordered a general mobilization on July 25th, but they did accept all the terms, except for those empowering Austrian representatives to suppress subversive elements inside of Serbia and to take part in the investigation and trial of Serbians linked to the assassination. So Austria claimed that this was a wholesale rejection and broke off diplomatic relations and ordered partial mobilization the next day. Then on July 28th, they declared war on Serbia and started shelling Belgrade. Now, Russia had started war preparations on the 25th. And so they now ordered general mobilization in support of Serbia on the 30th. Bethmann Hollweg, he delayed commencement of war preparations until July 31st to try to ensure backing from the SDP political opposition by presenting Russia as the aggressor. That afternoon, the Russian government was given an ultimatum requiring they cease all war measures against Germany and Austria-Hungary within 12 hours. Germany also demanded assurances France would remain neutral, which the French refused and ordered their own general mobilization, but not yet declaring war. Now, the reality for the German general staff was that they assumed a war on two fronts for quite a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
And they completed a plan in 1905 called the Schefflin Plan, which which envisaged the bulk of the army would be able to defeat France in 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then doing the same to Russia.
Yes. One knockout blow followed by the next.
So they ordered mobilizations that afternoon with that plan in mind.
There's a glaring problem with that plan. Let's see if we find out what it is.
Oh, we will. So on July 29th, the British cabinet held a meeting, and they decided its obligations to Belgium under the 1839 Treaty of London did not require it to oppose a German invasion with military force. This was largely driven by Prime Minister Asquith's desire to maintain unity. But he and his senior cabinet ministers were committed to support France. So the Royal Navy had been mobilized, and the public opinion was strongly in favor of intervention. On July 31st, Britain sends notes to Germany and France asking them to respect Belgian neutrality. France agreed. Germany did not reply.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. So once the German ultimatum to Russia expired on August 1st, the two countries were now at war. Wilhelm then was informed by his ambassador in London, Prince Nowski, that Britain would remain neutral if France was not attacked, and in any case may be stayed by a crisis in Ireland. So Wilhelm, he's ecstatic at this news, and he orders his general, Moltke, who was the German chief of staff, to march the whole of the army to the east. The general was like, dude, we can't do this. Deploying millions of guys is a huge task. We cannot improvise this.
Seems like that would be a good idea if you have at least some tentative assurances that neither France nor Britain would do anything unless you attack them first. It's like, okay, fine, we won't do that. We'll just fight the people we're at war with, and then we'll come back later for you. But we won't tell you that right away.
So the ambassador in London, the Mr. Prince, realized quickly that he made a mistake about Britain staying neutral if France is not attacked. But Wilhelm insisted on waiting for a telegram from his cousin, George V.
Oh, yeah. All these folks are related, which makes it even more tense. The Russian royalty, I mean,
This confirmed that there had been a misunderstanding. And so he told his general, go do what you want.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, remember, everybody's poised to go into France.
Yeah, the Schlieffen plan. It's got to be done. Everybody loves the plan.
Yeah. So the French intelligence organization was well aware of German plans to attack through Belgium. And the French commander-in-chief, a guy named General Joseph Joffre, asked that his troops be allowed to cross the border to preempt such a move. But the French government was like, no, we can't antagonize the British. So Joffre was told any advance into Belgium was only going to be done after a German invasion.
That's unfortunate. I mean, but I can understand the political. It's like, what do you do? It's like, hey, there's an abuser that's coming to do something very negative. And it's like, I could stop them. It's like, if you like preempt them, you'll look like the jerk. It's like, but I'm stopping a very bad person. It's like, well, there's nothing we can do until they do their bad thing first. Yikes.
Yeah. So on August 2nd, Germany occupied Luxembourg and exchanged fire with French units. On the 3rd, they declared war on France and demanded the Belgians allow them unimpeded right of way, which, of course, the Belgians were like, no way, Jose. So early on the morning of the 4th, the Germans invaded. Albert I of Belgium ordered his army to resist and called for assistance under the Treaty of London. Britain sent Germany an ultimatum declaring they respect Belgian neutrality and withdrawal, which expired at midnight, with the Germans ignoring them. Which means Germany was now at war with Britain and its global empire.
It's a big one.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's another thing. Germany is effectively landlocked and has, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, very few colonial outposts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they're taking on Russia, which is vast, France and England,
Yes.
which have plenty of colonies to draw from. And so from a manpower perspective alone, they're really outmanned, like at a big picture level. So really what they've got going for them is, I think, technological superiority and probably military discipline. And we'll see how that unfolds during the conflict.
Yes, this is going to be a very long conflict. So, beginning on August 12th, the Austrian and Serbs clashed at the battles of the Sur and Kolbera. Over the next 2 weeks, Austrian attacks were repulsed with heavy losses, which pretty much destroyed their hopes of a swift victory and marking the first major Allied victories of the war. As a result, Austria had to keep sizable forces on the Serbian front, which weakened its efforts against Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Serbia's defeat of the 1914 invasion had been called one of the major upset victories of the 20th centuries.
Wow.
In the spring of 1915, the campaign saw the first use of anti-aircraft warfare after an Austrian plane was shot down with ground-to-air fire. And we also saw the first medical evacuation by the Serbian army in autumn of 1915. So, as we mentioned earlier, the German order of battle placed approximately 80% of the army in the west, with the rest of it acting as a screening force in the east. The plan, to reiterate it, was to quickly knock France out of the war and then redeploy to the east to do the same to Russia. The German offensive in the west was officially titled Aufmarsch II West, but it is better known as what we said earlier, the Schlieffen Plan. This plan deliberately kept the German left weak to lure the French into attacking there, while the majority were allocated to the German right, so as to sweep through Belgium, encircle Paris, and trap the French armies against the Swiss border. This strategy was actually helped by the French themselves, since their Plan 17, envisaged a major offensive into the lost provinces, which were
Alsace-Lorraine
on the left.
Yeah, it's pretty cunning by the Germans, because I think they knew that that was what France wanted more than anything, were those territories.
Yeah.
And so all you got to do is hold. You don't need to advance at all from that area. You just hold it, let them come to you. And this is kind of the first time machine guns were a thing. And so they're doing cavalry charges or infantry charges into just a wall of steel, effectively. And
yeah,
they're just
this is when warfare changed.
Yeah. So the French are getting eaten up while the bulk of the German armies kind of is going around, like you said, through Belgium to encircle them. And Joffre apparently knew that this is something they would be doing, but he probably had a lot of politicians wanting to having him focus on recapturing those territories.
So by this time, though, Schlieffen was out and General Moltke was in. And the new general was concerned that the French might push too hard on the left flank. So, as the German army increased in size, as they were preparing for this war, he changed the allocation of forces between the German right and left from 85 to 15 to 70-30. This ultimately meant that there were insufficient forces to achieve the decisive success. This meant that their timetable was now changing. So the initial German advance in the West was, very successful. And by the end of August, the Allied left, which included the British Expeditionary Force, was in full retreat. French casualties in the first month exceeded 260,000.
Golly.
Which included 27,000 killed. On August 22nd, during the Battle of the Frontiers. 27,000 killed in one day.
Yeah, those numbers are absurd. That's
mind-boggling. Yeah. The German planning provided broad strategic instructions while allowing army commanders considerable freedom in carrying them out at the front. This worked well back in the 1870s, but in 1914, von Kluck used this freedom to disobey orders. Which opened a gap between the German armies as they closed on Paris. The French and British exploited this gap to halt the German advance east of Paris at the First Battle of the Marne, which happened between September 5th and 12th. And they succeeded in pushing the German forces back about 31 miles. In 1911, the Russians had agreed with the French to attack Germany within 15 days of mobilization. However, this was unrealistic, and the two armies that entered East Prussia on August 17th did it without many of their support elements, which means that the Russian Second Army was effectively destroyed at the Battle of Tannenberg.
Oh, wow.
On the 26th to 30th of August. But the Russian advance did cause the Germans to reroute their 8th Field Army from France to East Prussia, which was a factor in the Allied victory on the Marne. So by the end of 1914, German troops held strong defensive positions inside France, controlled the bulk of France's domestic coal fields, and had inflicted 230,000 more casualties than they had lost themselves.
Wow.
But communication problems and questionable command decisions cost Germany the chance of a decisive outcome. And this means that they had failed to achieve the primary objective of avoiding a long two-front war.
Yeah, I think the thinking back then was generally, if we can attack with overwhelming force to the point that the war is over quickly, that's actually a more genteel way of approaching it. Like, you end up, yes, you have a lot of deaths, but it doesn't keep it protracted. It minimizes suffering in a way. And even though we're having these unheard of death counts, like before machine guns and the automation of warfare, this was like multiple battles would have had to take place to get anywhere near those numbers.
Now, here's the thing. At the end of 1914, Prince Wilhelm already knew that they had lost. He told an American reporter, quote, "We have lost the war. It will go on for a long time, but lost it is already."
I wonder why he said that.
Because their primary plan failed, and they're now
improvising.
Stopped. But it's like, okay, you've lost the war. Why keep going? Just,
Well, this was a time when if you lost a war, you lost all kinds of territory. I mean, they just got territory from France previously in the late 1800s. And so I think they were just fighting to keep themselves from being torn to pieces. And I mean, he's not wrong. That's almost decidedly what would have happened. And I think it's particularly interesting because Germany was not the primary aggressor. Like, they're doing a lot of the fighting and killing, but they didn't start this. They're coming to the aid of an ally.
Yeah, they're coming to the aid of an ally, but with what we just went through, they have been planning for this for years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Europe has had centuries of tensions, and so I get it. This is just they're being opportunistic for sure. Yeah, they never really even needed to attack France to begin with. Like, if they would have stayed out of Belgium and stayed out of France, they could have focused all their efforts on Russia, and it would have been done.
Live and learn.
I guess that's armchair generaling.
Yeah, after the fact.
Yeah. You know what they should have done? Seen the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So we have started World War One. Well,
whoa, that's quite a claim.
Germany has.
Well,
but...
I think Gavrilo Princip has most of the blame on him.
Well, okay, let me rephrase that. Our podcast has started covering World War One.
There we go. Yes, I do agree.
And we're going to go ahead and end the episode here. Next time, we're going to start talking about the Asia and Pacific areas and African areas and Indian areas before heading to the Western Front. But so you can look forward to that next time.
Oh, yeah. I am. Thank you, Dale.
Yeah. So we're going to honor one of our fallen heroes with the help of HeroCards.us. Today we are honoring Maximiliano Luna. Captain Maximiliano Luna. His hometown was Los Llanos, New Mexico. He served in the U.S. Army with the 1st U.S. Volunteer Cavalry, the Rough Riders, 34th Infantry. His date of sacrifice was November 15th, 1899 in the Philippines. He was 29 years old. Captain Maximiliano Luna of the Territory of New Mexico was one of the first to volunteer to serve in the 1st Volunteer Cavalry, better known as the Rough Riders, in the Spanish-American War. A descendant of old Spanish colonial family, Luna volunteered partly to prove New Mexico's worthiness for statehood. He was one of the Rough Riders' 4 captains and the highest-ranking Hispanic in the famous regiment. He served in all the major battles fought in Cuba and played a key role as a translator when the Spanish surrendered. Luna returned to New Mexico after the war in 1898, but volunteered to rejoin the army to fight in the Philippines against an insurrection that followed the American acquisition of the islands. Luna drowned in the Philippines when he attempted to cross the flooded Ageo River on November 15, 1899. His body was never found. His name was listed first on the Rough Rider Monument dedicated at Arlington National Cemetery in 1907. Not because he died in the Spanish-American War, but as an honor extended by his fellow Rough Riders, including President Theodore Roosevelt. He was the first Hispanic name ever to appear on a monument or gravestone in the National Cemetery. So, Captain Maximiliano Luna, we thank you.
Thank you.
All right, XO, get us out of here.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. We look forward to this every time. We love diving into history and hope that you get something out of it. So, if you ever want to get a hold of us to let us know what you thought, maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't, maybe there's something detailed you want to add or you want us to include, there's a couple of ways to do that, to drop us a line. You can email us at usnavyhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can contact us on X/Twitter or Twitter/X, whichever you prefer. We listen to both. It's at USN That's it. There's no .com. I was going to add a .com, but that's irrelevant with a handle. We also have a Discord server. You can find that link in the show notes. And feel free to rate and review us. If you're listening to us on iTunes or Spotify or what have you, it helps us get the word out for this show. And as always, you can just share it with a friend or family member and say, hey, I learned this interesting thing on this show. Check it out. And give it to them as a gift. It's a gift to them. It's a gift to us. Let's celebrate. Okay. Thank you. And keep listening. Back to you, Dale.
All right. With that, we're going to wish you guys fair winds and following seas. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.